Welcome to Volume 11 Rock Talk Podcast, brought to you by Volume 11 Music. Your hosts, Rich Hoffa, Rick Lawhorn, and Mark Dunn. Rock Talk, Volume 11 Music.
Hey, how's it going? We're back, and this is Rock Talk at Volume 11 Music in Fredericksburg, Virginia. I'm Rich.
Rick Lawhorn.
Mark Dunn.
All right. So yeah, we missed a week. We missed a week, but
it took a week for us to coordinate our wardrobe.
Yeah, I know. So if you haven't noticed, you've got Rock Talk merch here. You can buy those on the website, Volume 11. -11-music.q. Yeah, that's right. We'll post the website so you can purchase these and we can send them out to you. I'm out of extra larges, as you can see, so we'll order some more shirts in. But it turned out pretty cool. So your Volume 11 Rock Talk.
And hello to our podcast viewer in Djibouti.
Djibouti. Okay.
Yeah.
What's his name or her name?
I think he's a Sheikh Djibouti.
Sheikh. Okay, I got you. But before we get into it, I wanted to go. I always look at YouTube and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I was flipping through some videos and watching a bunch of different stuff, and I stumbled across Metallica, Mark's favorite band,
favorite drummer
in the world. They just played at one of the big colleges here in Virginia,
Tech,
UVA, Virginia Tech.
Isn't there some sort of usage like Virginia Tech?
They use Enter Sandman.
Yeah, they use Enter Sandman. So the cool part is, of course, with the concert, you got a lot more people there, and when they start doing it, everybody starts jumping up and down. It actually registered on an earthquake meter.
Yeah, I saw
it.
that.
It got up to almost 2, I guess, or right at 2. What do you call that? So with the jumping up and down, they were moving some earth.
Yeah, they're moving the earth. So, and Hetfield's going, yeah!
That's right. So pretty cool.
Moving the earth. Next time, moving the earth. Yeah!
Hello, Hokey. I've always thought Metallica was hokey, and that just proves
That's right. But that's a rock concert for you.
Yeah, man.
There's little fluffy stuff going on. We're shaking the ground.
Shaking it.
So this week's episode, we're going to talk a little bit trivial. And if you're enjoying the videos, please hit that subscribe button, like the video, share it, please comment, and again, if you guys have any topics, shoot them out there, and we'll be glad to cover those topics in a future episode.
Questions,
but we have a lot of good conversations, and one is the amount of tribute bands that are out playing, and also bands that are still under that namesake that don't have original members in the bands anymore. And
not even third cousins.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, are they a tribute band? Are they the real deal? I mean, what's your thoughts?
You be the judge.
Exactly.
Well,
so
I think it's interesting to point out that I recognize the entertainment value in players that can come together and make a tribute band that is. There's two different types, in my opinion. There's the one that goes out there and wears the garb.
Yeah.
Dresses up like it's the show.
Right.
And then there's other, if we wanted to get cerebral about it, symphony orchestras are tribute bands.
Yeah,
because they're playing material written in the 1700s and 1800s.
Right.
1600s, 1500s.
Yeah.
So there's there's that aspect of it. So I wanted to say that because we're not just being snarky.
Yeah.
It's just a real kind of a baseline when you think about it.
Right.
And I've been in a band before called Deja where we called it rock exactitude. And it was absurdly difficult to play The Dark Side of the Moon and tethered to The Wizard of Oz. And that wasn't a tribute band, but how do you not call it that? Because we're playing it. But I always compared that to the symphony aspect.
Right.
Okay.
Because the symphonies are playing that specific piece by Mozart to the interpretation of the conductor arranger. Right.
Yeah.
But you've got bands now that are under the name of the band moniker and maybe have one.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Some have none.
Yeah.
Right.
And, I'm not saying I feel bad about it, but I feel a little bit of when there's not even a handoff with one member from even an original previous member that may no longer even be alive.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to say. Somebody's bought the name. They were able to market it because they bought the name.
But did they buy the name?
In the one
and
particular
some of that stuff they couldn't. They might not.
Well, the Molly Hatchet. That's the one that's kind of the low hanging fruit in this
right.
conversation.
Yeah.
I mean,
telling it like it is.
Bought the name years ago.
Yeah,
and he's been with them a long time, and I think he actually did. I mean, I think he's been with them since the '80s.
Yeah,
and with Riff West, that was also in Foghat. But it's literally no one that's
from the original
lineup.
Well, like I was saying to Mark earlier, when I was a young kid, back in 1980, 81, 82, I loved still do, original Molly Hatchet. I had all the early albums, loved them. I learned my pentatonic scales. I could jam out to these Southern rock guitar solos.
Whistle.
Yeah, and you had Danny Joe Brown, and Dwayne Rowland, and Dave Lubeck, and that whole crew. And sadly, one by one, they've all perished. None of them are even alive anymore at this point, sadly. And we have a Molly Hatchet out there touring as Molly Hatchet, and none of those guys were on the albums that I had, and I had the first 3 or 4 at least. So what's the deal?
I mean, they're flying the flag. They're actually, they're recording stuff too. So I mean, I want people to know that we're not harshing on them.
Yeah.
Not dissing. Everybody's to do their thing, but I think that there's a little bit of a disingenuous nature to it.
Yeah.
I mean, even when Robert Plant and Jimmy Page went on tour, they called it Page Plant.
Yeah, they even called it Led Zeppelin.
Right.
And that's obviously.
And all they did was Zeppelin material.
Yeah.
They did Walking into Clarksdale. I think there was some of that.
Right, but they didn't call it Led Zeppelin.
No, they didn't. And honestly, that didn't matter.
Right.
But I mean, there's if you look at some of our most heralded bands over time. I mean, time doesn't wait for anyone.
No.
Yeah, right.
Very true.
I was surprised and then not surprised that when Dusty Hill passed away, that ZZ Top continued on. But they'd already discussed it.
Yeah, they'd already made kind of a deal.
And it's still, I mean, and if you think about it, it's been those 3 guys.
Since 1969, yeah.
And then also U2 is another band that has never really... They've
had the
lineup, but Larry Mullen had to have somebody fill in this year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you think about it that way, that's kind of utility. But there are a number of acts out there now that are...
But I'm with you, Mark. I really am. But let me throw it from this perspective. All right, so we talked about the Molly Hatchet thing. And this is a silly example. Well, let's just go back to a time machine to 1970. The Beatles break up, right? 2-3 years later, there's the Beatles... And it's Joe Davis on rhythm guitar and vocals.
Right.
And Mike Smith is the bass player.
Right.
And this guy named Bob Clark is the drummer of the Beatles. People be going, what's this is like fraud, basically. No one's going to buy into that, right? If it's the Beatles, and somebody called themselves the Beatles and toured in 1973 or 1975. Right. So,
but we spell it with 2 E's.
Yeah, right, exactly. And all that scattered.
But in a situation like that, it's kind of like what you're saying is that the Beatles break up, they're no more, and then somebody else puts a band completely together
and calls it the Beatles.
And calls it the
Beatles.
But I think like with Molly Hatchet, I think that everybody was just kind of either passing away or leaving from the band, and it was by inertia.
Bought the name.
By inertia.
Yeah.
And then you ended up with what it's become now. But even it was the Blackfoot. It wasn't the original, and he played for Leonard
Ricky Medlock.
So he did Blackfoot, and then didn't he step out? But he was still managing.
Correct.
It's his band.
Yeah,
but
we were supposed to open for them, but then COVID did us in. That was back in 2020. We actually had a date where it was going to be Cactus Jack opening for Blackfoot.
Yeah.
And then what ended up happening was good old COVID. But it was not Ricky Medlock to be on stage. It was him kind of managing Blackfoot, but doing the whole thing, and they licensed it out. And I didn't know the full scoop at the time, but I found that out.
And I think that's what Mick Jones does with Foreigner.
Yes.
He plays when he wants to.
You are
good
correct.
gig if you can get it.
If you nice work if you can get it. Yeah, he does a few dates here and there. but there's a lot he doesn't do, and then there's a substitute guitar player, and so you're seeing a band called Foreigner with nobody on those original 3 or 4 albums that really made them the superstars that they
Although
became.
they did bring, I just saw this in the last 2 weeks, Lou Graham's been back out with them.
I heard
for some
something
dates.
that he's actually really singing with them again.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Very cool.
So, and he, he doesn't, I'm not saying he's aged terribly, but he doesn't look like Lou Graham from when we were
Yeah.
kids. But evidently, when he lays into it, he does pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
He actually had, seriously, I read this a few years back, like a brain tumor a number of years ago that really sidelined him. Obviously a very serious health condition. And thankfully, he was able to get over that, and he wasn't even able to perform for a while. And then he started doing the solo things. And now, like what you're saying, back actually with maybe Foreigner here.
And, I guess it takes, on a reasonable scale, core members of a band, and what comes to mind when I say that is heart.
Right.
Ann and Nancy.
The Wilson.
Nobody else in the band was ever in the band.
Right.
Yeah.
You got it. Exactly. Yeah,
Right.
That's a good one.
But then again too, and we've had multiple conversations about that too. Is some bands have somebody. It could be either the singer, the drummer, the guitar player, or bass player. It could be a bass player, whoever. If they're not in the band anymore, it's really not that bad. Could you imagine Van Halen without Eddie Van Halen?
There's no Van Halen.
Yeah,
Could you imagine
they have
AC/DC
3 different
without?
singers.
But they've had all the different singers.
Right.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
but the band was different though. It was
for sure.
it was
different vibe.
it was a different thing. But
Right.
could you imagine AC/DC without Angus Young?
No, I can't.
No.
Angus is the guy that.
he's
But
the
I had
guy.
friends of mine go, so Rick, who do you think is going to take over for Eddie Van Halen? I was like, nobody. Nobody's going to fill Eddie's
Right.
shoes. He took his shoes with him. There's nobody. There's players that can play, but to be a permanent member, if I buy a ticket to see a Van Halen concert, I expect to see Eddie Van Halen on that guitar.
There's just
Sadly,
certain
that's not
bands
gonna
that
happen.
have a key person or
Element.
a key,
Yeah.
and that's like when you talk about heart. Ann and Nancy are hard.
Right.
100%.
The
And
rest
that's
of the
my
band
point.
is just the
Yeah,
band,
But
right?
back when Little Queen, that was a band. Roger Fisher, Howard
right.
The
Leese.
band was hard, and you had those members.
That was a steadfast lineup.
Yeah.
Until couples started to get together. That ruins a band.
Yeah.
And I think Howard Leese hung on for a while, and the drummer for a bit, but I don't think they've had a lineup.
Yeah.
And I think Roger Fisher, just the El Kabong incident where he started smashing guitars on stage.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's him and Nancy breaking up that night. But it's Ann and Nancy. They're hard.
Yeah.
So at some point the legal aspect of it had to have been somebody's getting bought out, or somebody never owned it to begin with, or whatever. you know.
Well, here's one for you, though. How about when we have not one, but 2 bands? For example, back in 1992, my band Calamity Jane, we got to open up for Foghat. And our good friend Kenny Ames, who can be a funny, sarcastic, wise guy, but an amazing bass player. I said, Kenny, we're opening up for Foghat. He goes, oh yeah? Which one? And I'm like, oh, you want to be a wise ass, huh? Oh, a wise guy, And so I go to find out, and he's right. There were 2 Foghats. There was the drummer, Roger Earl, and then there was, at the time, Lonesome Dave, who was the original singer.
Because he died in the mid-90s, right?
This is 92, so this is about 3 years before his death.
I got to see him.
And so we opened for the Lonesome Dave version here in Stafford at Sylvia's Palomino Club.
Yeah.
And that was Calamity Jane and Foghat. It was not the Roger Earl version. But I thought he was just pulling my leg and busting my chops, which he sort of was, but because we were old friends and we joke around. But he was right. It's like there's not one, there's 2 Foghats. So I had never really thought of that happening before.
There's two Queensryches now.
Yes, the Queensryche and L.A. Guns, I think,
L.A.
had a
Guns
weird
was
situation.
that. Didn't Dokken have?
Don Dokken, Great White. There was 2 Great White scenarios.
Two Great Whites.
And what about Rat? Because Rat's got some weird stuff. Because everybody claims
Rat's not Rat.
It's Piercy and Dave Martini now.
I think it's and Carlos Cavazzo.
And Carlos Cavazzo.
Yeah. Because I played with them last year, but it was Johnny Monaco and another guitar player, and
with Stephen Piercy. Yeah.
But even with DeMartini and Rat is Stephen Piercy's band.
I know that exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You can't even call it Rat, even though he's the guy that's like the centerpiece for the.
Well, it was
band,
Mickey Rat. His band was Mickey
That's
Rat.
right, Mickey Rat.
So so what happens along the way is there's obviously a lawsuit. And you know, and I can't believe that the judge told. I didn't know that about Foghat. I can't
seriously. Roger Earl and Lonesome Dave.
I don't doubt it one bit.
Oh, yeah.
No, I can't believe that he did that with Queensryche, because, I mean, Jeff Tate.
Yeah, that voice, you know.
And, but evidently the other guy must have been pretty good. But I just find it interesting that you would allow that to happen.
Right.
Because that's essentially a trademark SKU number on society.
Yeah, right.
You know, you don't go to McDonald's and ask for the Whopper.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing, and it's I mean, are they? What really separates them from the tribute bands is the question I think we're asking.
Going back to that.
Yeah, right.
Well, to me, my opinion, and I appreciate tribute bands. I do.
Too.
I mean, I'm not, I really do. I mean, I play in cover bands myself. What's the difference? Well, cover bands, we cover a little bit of everything. We could go from Merle Haggard to AC/DC. Tribute bands, you say, we're going for Van Halen. We're going to emulate 1978 or 1984 Van Halen. And I think it's cool. I got no issues with that at all. My issue would be, like we said earlier, when you cross that division line and there's a band that say, no, we're not a tribute band. We are Molly Hatchet.
Yeah.
You know, and I understand the reason.
I'm in Cactus Jack.
And so that being an example, or like Skynyrd even. I mean, that's an interesting one because, again, I'm a big Southern rock fan. I love Skynyrd growing up, and the original members, sadly, are no longer with us. So when you go see Leonard Skynyrd, it's really nobody that was on those classic albums.
At least Donnie's the family.
But you do have families.
And he's been in that incarnation.
Right.
But that was even, if I'm not mistaken, a contentious conversation between a couple of the widows.
Yes, I do remember hearing that.
But I mean, when they first came back out as that, it was still Gary Rossington.
Yeah.
Billy Powell. Is that his name?
Billy Powell was in it. And, the bass player was back. Leon.
Yep. And I don't know if they had Artemis back then or not. Artemis is not even an original member.
Right, he didn't come into like the third or fourth album, I think.
But he's the last living kind of tether to the
original heyday of the band. Yeah.
So that was interesting, and maybe that was the first thing to test the waters on that.
Yeah.
The 38 Specials, Don Barnes.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah, you got one main person, and then the band kind of revolves.
I mean, Danny Chauncey was the guitar player from '88 to, I think, right before COVID, and he retired from the road, and it's literally. And Don sounds amazing still.
Yeah, I've seen some recent clips. He does. Yeah, they still.
He's killing.
It's cool when you see something. We know we're all get up in age a little bit. We're not 22 anymore, 25, but you see them, and they're like, man, they're in their 60s, maybe 70s, and sounding really
good.
Yeah, Styx is a great example.
Tommy Shaw is not aged a day.
No, he still looks like he pretty much did back in the day.
And they're still tuned.
And they sound great.
And he's singing those notes.
Playing great guitar, too.
Yeah, killing it. And that's just, and he's not even an original member. So
no, he came along.
JY and the Panazzo bass player.
Dennis DeYoung was an original, but he's no longer.
I don't know if they're ever going to reconcile that.
They won't. There's a lot of bad blood there.
Sure is.
There really is. Yeah. I tell you, read interviews with them, and like they're just like mud balls thrown everywhere.
All over Mr. Roboto.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Poor old Mr.
But I mean, that's another example of, and they bring out the bass player for 4 or 5 songs, and God bless him. He goes out on the road, and and it's pretty cool. I mean, they got Ricky Phillips from.
Yes.
What was he in Blackfoot?
I think he was at one point. Yes, Ricky Phillips. Yeah.
So it's it's a lot of cross pollination.
Yeah, but the cool thing is, I mean, with it, whether you think it's the real deal or not, at least they're keeping the music alive.
That's exactly right.
And,
all for that.
And keeping it live, and same thing with the tribute bands. I mean, it's introducing it to, younger players or younger kids or whatever. So it's keeping it going.
And I've got some friends in Pandora's Box doing the Aerosmith thing, and they're out of Atlanta.
Yeah.
And Steve, they're actually playing at Groove on the 30th.
Oh yeah, I saw an ad for Aerosmith.
Yeah. And Steve Taylor is a friend of mine. Actually, Steve replaced me in a country gig when I left it before I moved back to Virginia when I was based out of Atlanta. Wonderful guitar player, sweet guy. And Nathan is the singer who is, really good. Steven Tyler. In fact, Nathan was a singer in Lynch Mob for a while.
Oh, wow.
Nathan Utz.
Great, yeah.
And Steve said, because I said, man, he's like little guy, blonde hair, he's putting the Joe Perry wig on. I'm like, how do you like that? He goes, look, when we decided to do it, we all said, if we're going to do it,
Yeah.
we're going to play and sound better than they did live. And I'm like,
Wow.
man, you're talking about Aerosmith. And he goes, yeah. And he was kind of right because, you know, for their heyday, they weren't in the best shape.
Yeah.
But, and these guys
weren't called the Toxic Twins.
Exactly.
Nothing, right?
But man, when you see them live, it is entertaining in that they're actually just really great.
Yeah.
Really great players.
Cool.
And
Well, you got to be good to do that.
100%.
Yeah, to take on whoever you're going to take on.
Exactly.
And do it legit.
And you know, that's how Ripper Owens got discovered.
Right, the Judas Priest.
Yeah, Scott saw him in Ohio and took the tape back because he was doing a Judas Priest tribute.
Yeah.
And KK Downing and Glenn Tipton swore up and down that he was singing to. How did they get Rob's track isolated for him to mouth to it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's how they swore it was. So I mean, sometimes you have an inadvertent tribute just because you are that kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
And then you got Greta Van Fleet. I mean, they're a Led Zeppelin tribute band.
Yeah, we'll get some hate mail on that one.
Yeah.
No, I don't care.
Really.
I don't care. Anybody tries to argue that point.
Yeah, you'll be on the losing end of the stick.
That's true. That's a little.
And I'm not harsh on them.
No, they're
doing a good
cool
job.
what they
They can
do.
play.
Yeah, I'm not saying they aren't good. But it's obviously very Zeppelin-esque.
But their producers could be taken to court.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. That's it.
Good Lord.
That's it. So tell us what your thoughts are. Do you like these bands? I mean, do you think that it's more of a tribute band rather than the real deal? We're glad to hear from you guys, and it'd be interesting to see your thoughts on that. So that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode of Rock Talk. Where are you guys playing at this weekend?
So as soon as we're done here, I'm driving to Orange, Virginia.
All right.
To play at the Main Street
You're
Tavern.
playing out there a lot now.
Yeah, for some reason.
I know, man.
And then Friday, I'm in Clifton at the Main Street Pub. So two Main Street gigs.
Cool.
And then Saturday, I'm in Richmond with the band. And then Sunday, I'm in Berryville at Chili Hollow Brewing. So I got a busy weekend.
That's cool. Cool deal.
All right. So Friday, May 23rd happens to be my wonderful wife, Rose Lawhorn's birthday. I'm going to happy birthday, Rose. Yeah. And we are going to be out at Patriot Park, Spotsylvania. Beautiful amphitheater. It's gorgeous. Gates open at 6. Show starts at 7. It's about a 2-hour show, 7 to 9. We do a mixture of country, southern rock, a lot of southern rock, and some classic rock, Cactus Jack.
Is this the real Cactus Jack?
The real yeah, right. We're a tribute to the rest of Cactus Jack. And then Saturday, the next night, it's May 24th. Another cool place, Lake Anna Tap House. Really cool brewery right on the water, Lake Anna, Virginia. That's 6 to 9, Saturday, May 24th. So
I love the early gigs.
Cactus Jack weekend, back with the Jack. Yeah.
Yeah, and I won't be doing any of that, but probably I'll be fixing Darius' pricing since he keeps sending me hate mail for the last 2 weeks. And more on that, guys. Some of the pricing is going up, so if you are looking for, you've been waiting to buy a guitar or buy a pedal or something like that.
Can't wait.
I would buy it now, especially electronic stuff, because of tariffs and stuff like that could hit that particular type of thing. I think a lot of the companies are jumping to the gun, shall we say. They're increasing before an actual increase is there, so you might want to buy it now rather than later.
Diodari is an American company.
Yeah, but you get stuff from
I was going to
somewhere
say,
else.
I think some of the other things are from
it is, and I happen to
overseas.
carry a lot of their stuff between Evans and ProMark and all that stuff, and it's actually been quite a nightmare. So that's probably what I'll be doing over the weekend. I hope not. Hopefully they leave me alone, and we can kind of go from there. But cool deal. We'll see you next week, and hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you again next week. See ya.
This has been an episode of Volume 11 Rock Talk Podcast, brought to you by Volume 11 Music.